Good evening, Flosstube. It's Lori of Mischievous Stitches. Welcome to my channel. Tonight, I wanted to do a quick tutorial. Several years ago, I filmed a tutorial and posted it on my channel on how to perform the pin stitch, both ending and beginning the thread. And on that video, I often get questions, even now, of how to do that very stitch on Aida. So I thought I'd take a few moments this evening. I've already loaded up my frame with a piece of Aida, and I've loaded up a needle with a brightly colored thread to make sure you're able to see. So I'm going to zoom in and let's get started. So on Aida, each square, of course, is where you place a stitch. Now when I perform my stitches, or when I stitch a cross stitch, I start with my bottom leg comes up in the bottom left-hand corner to the top right, like this. And then I come up with opposite way for the second leg of the cross and go from bottom right to top left, like this. So I start this way, and then I go over that way. So with the pin stitch is going to be, or serve as, the bottom leg of your cross stitch. So let's go back in that same hole that I have my needle parked in. We're going to pierce through the fabric with your needle into the center of your square, and we're going to pull that thread through. We're going to leave a little bit of a tail. We're going to snip that off later, don't worry, but you're going to want to put a little bit of pressure, and you're going to want to hold that thread down. Then I'm going to come up in that bottom left. We're going to pull that needle and thread through. Let me make sure there's no knot in the back. All right, now that's going to happen. I didn't hold my tail hard enough, so let's try that again. I'm going to dive down into the center. I'm going to pull my needle and thread through, and I'm going to press and hold that tail down. I'm going to come back up in the bottom left, pull the needle and thread through, and I'm going to pierce with the needle back down into the center spot where your tail is, and pull the thread through again. And then I'm going to come up in the top right, pull that needle and thread through, and we're going to pierce that thread in the center again and go back down in the same hole as the tail again. I'm going to give the thread just a tiny tug, both the thread that's beneath and then the tail, to kind of secure that pin stitch. And now we're going to cut or snip off the tail. Now be careful when you're snipping. Right now we don't have any other stitches around, but if you were actively cross stitching, you have several stitches, you don't want to snip into those threads. So just be very careful. Make sure your scissors are parallel to the fabric in the stitches that you already have. Lift that tail up, snip, and that there is your first pin stitch. That is your foundation of your first leg of your cross stitch and your pin stitch to lock in those threads. Then we're going to come up in that bottom left, like if we're stitching a straight line here as a border, and we're going to stitch like we normally would. I happen to stitch left to right. I know some of you stitch opposite of that, but the premise will be the same. So we're going to stitch a few threads here, through a few stitches here. But you see those threads are not, that initial pin stitch is locked into place. It's not going anywhere. And then I'm going back up into the top left of the next stitch to finish that stitch. Bottom right to top left. And then I'm going to drop down to the next level. Now we're going to end with a pin stitch. The premise is the same. The only difference with ending is that you can end at any one of the four corners of this, or the four sides of the actual stitch. Let me zoom in a little more. So right here for this tutorial, we're just going to end the thread at the bottom. So you're going to come up in the center again, bottom of those two threads. So you have, on Aida, you have a hole here, and you have a hole on the left hand and right hand side of that stitch above. See where I'm coming up there? And there you're going to want to come in between the center of these two holes right here. So let's pierce that thread again. And we're going to be doing the same thing we did to start. We're just going to do it in reverse. So we're going to come up in the center. We're going to go down in the bottom left. We're kind of going to come back up in the center where you've already brought a thread up through. And you're going to go down in the bottom right. And then you're going to come back up into that center again. And you're going to give a slight tug. You don't want to pull it really hard. You just want to lock it into place. And then we're going to, again, making sure not to snip the stitches that are already there. Keeping it parallel to the fabric, you're going to snip. And as you can see, there's a little bit of shadow. So let me angle that up. It looks like a tiny little back stitch, but that's your ending thread. So let's go through that one more time. To start, you're going to pierce the center of the square. You're going to pull your thread through. You're going to press down and hold that tail. You're going to pull your thread up, pierce back down in the same hole with the thread, making sure to hold that tail. You're going to come up in that top right, pull that thread through. Holding that tail, you're going to go back down into that same hole again. You're going to tug your thread from behind gently, as well as hold your tail and tug it gently. You're locking those threads in place. And then, again, you're going to snip those threads. That is the first leg of your cross stitch, and that is your pin stitch. All right, we're going to, again, do a few. And then we're going to do an ending stitch. Again, I stitch my crosses from bottom left to top right, and from bottom right to top left. Now I'm going to drop down to the next line. Okay, to top left. All right, and now I'm going to pierce those threads again in the center of that bottom one. And again, you can let's do it on a different spot, because the last one we ended it in the bottom. You can also end it between these two stitches here. So I'm going to bring my needle up in the center between those two stitches. I'm going to pull my needle through. I'm going to go down in the hole to the left between those two stitches, pull my thread and needle through, pierce my needle back up through that center hole again, go down into the right center, and then I'm going to come back up to the center for the third time. I'm going to give it a gentle tug to lock it in place, and being careful, I'm going to snip that. So that is the pin stitch performed on Aida. Now the benefit to this is it keeps your back nice and tidy. If you're stitching in a frame like this, let me see if I can show you the frame a little bit. I have this frame attached to a table here with me, so I can stitch with it, but as with a Q-snap, you're not having to flip your hoop in your hand back and forth to see the back, because all of your work is going to be done from the top. There's not going to be no tails to snip or bury in the back, because you're going to start and end and stitch from the top of this piece. If you have any questions, any comments, just leave them below. I'll be happy to help you the best I can. For those of you that's left the questions on the other video, thank you very much. I hope this explains the stitch well enough that you're able to use this in your stitching on a day-to-day basis. But just know that I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have, so just don't hesitate to leave them below. Thanks for watching, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.